Welcome to Shadow, friends. We're leaving actuality behind, as this is our wrap-up episode of A Woman with Hollow Eyes Season 2. We've had a wonderful Invisible Sun adventure, and we're going to talk about it today and take a bunch of your questions. So for anyone just tuning in, I'm Darcy Ross. I was your GM, and now I'm just another person at this table, I guess. I guess I'm nothing now.
Wow.
I'm nothing.
Wow.
I've lost everything that had any
Darcy,
meaning to me.
you're something.
Darcival.
I'm a little dramatic today. I use she, her pronouns, and we're gonna let people know where you can find us at the top of this episode and any plugs that you should know about, as hopefully you'll go on to follow all of the projects by these wonderful people in the future. So what I want to plug is Arcana of the Ancients is a cool Kickstarter that my company is running right now. It is taking my don't tell Invisible Sun, but my very favorite game that got me into GMing, Numenera, and it is taking...
I believe you're pronouncing that wrong.
Oh, do not start. It is taking it to 5e, which is really exciting, so it could bring in a whole new audience to my lovely Numenera. And so check that out. It ends Friday, Arcana of the Ancients. Go check it out. And you can find me at Darcy L. Ross, all the places.
Numenera! Hey everybody, I'm James D'Amato. You might recognize me as the host of the One Shot podcast or the Campaign podcast. On this show, I was just a player, but now I'm also nothing as we all become dust. I got to introduce you to my pronouns, he and him. That's my pronouns. As far as plugs, coming up this week, actually, Star Wars Celebration is in our lovely home of Chicago. And on Monday, because Celebration is a buck wild 5-day convention, on Monday, Never Tell Me the Pods, a Star Wars podcast that I participate in, is going to be on the podcast stage. So come check that out. We're also doing a podcaster meetup at 7 on Saturday. So if you want to come meet me, meet Pranks, head over there and check it out. It's at the Hyatt, I believe. So that's going to be a lot of fun. The last thing that I need to plug is on Campaign. We do this little story called Skyjacks that I am quite a big fan of. I encourage everybody to check that out. But if you are a Skyjacks fan and you want to see fan art, then, or not even fan art, the official character art for characters, I really recommend you enroll in our mailing list, because tomorrow, on Wednesday, we're going to be previewing the official character art for Jonnet Kessler, and he looks amazing. So sign up by going to bit.ly/SkyjacksCrew.
I'm on the mailing list.
See? Adira's on the mailing list.
Yeah.
I should get on the mailing list.
You should. It's good.
bit.ly/SkyjacksPod.
/SkyjacksCrew.
Skyjacks
Because you're
crew.
joining the crew of the Uhuru.
Join the crew. Excellent. Awesome. And finally, we have Adira. Adira, please introduce yourself to our wonderful audience.
Hello, my name is Adira Slattery. My pronouns are she, her. I, unlike everyone else, am everything.
Yes,
I am
accurate.
all-consuming, all singing, all dancing. The whole...
All LARPing.
Yeah,
all game
LARPing.
designing.
Yeah.
All many wonderful things.
Yeah, so I played Shida Saman on Season 2 of One with Hollow Eyes. It was a blast. It was my first experience with Invisible Sun, which is very interesting, and it's got cool plastic hands, which is the only thing on this table right now.
Please, I believe that is a resin hand, as
Oh,
I have
sorry.
heard
My
much
apologies.
consternation over on the internet.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. You can find me basically everywhere as Adira Slattery, because that's my name and nobody else has it, so I have good SEO. I release games on itch at adira.itch.io. Also, if you're in the Chicago area and want to do a LARP, let me know, because I do a lot of LARPs and I run them, and we do a lot of LARPs in Chicago and they're fun. Yeah.
Heck yes. Awesome. Follow Adira at all the things, and I'm so excited. I didn't know your actual itch page. So
Yeah, it's just my first name.itch.io.
That's the way to do it. That SEO is strong.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, folks, we're going to be watching chat tonight as people drift in and out. So if there are any burning questions you have for us, we will take them. We did have some questions of varying
Answerability.
answerability. That's the word from Twitter. Thank you. So yeah, one of the ones that people. So one was Calvin Y. Do you have any answers?
I feel
to
like
that?
it's pretty evident at this point. I mean, it makes sense. If you don't understand, that's on you.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel like you've had 2 seasons to figure it out, and we've laid a lot of information out there. So at this point, Calvin, obviously.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. Calvin, obviously. One person did ask about the development mode that was typed out and such that we did.
Yeah.
And I think that the question was
With the
maybe
Kickstarter backer. Yeah.
Yeah, with the Kickstarter backer. The question was, were we intending to make people cry? And I feel like it's always a slight goal of mine to make people cry
yeah,
if at all possible. But do you want to talk a little bit about like that experience, or was there anything you wanted to share about that?
Yeah. So it's kind of tough sometimes being trans on the internet.
Really?
Yeah. But it's real great to be able to like tell stories and like talk about like explicitly trans themes and trans narratives and things like that. When we were talking about what we want to do with the development and things like that, you mentioned a couple different options to the Kickstarter backer, and I was like really excited when he was also excited about like talking about Shannon coming from Shadow. And yeah, it was real great. I really enjoyed doing it. I don't often find myself enjoying text roleplay as much as I really enjoyed that, I'll be honest. Yeah, it was just good.
This was Terry, but his last name is escaping me because I'm very bad.
I think his Twitter name is MC Betamax.
MC Betamax was a wonderful co-GM for that. So yeah, I think when we shopped around ideas, we kind of did this with Calvin too. One of the earliest things we did with season 1, the development mode wise, was exploring Calvin's escape from Shadow.
Yeah.
And so we did that one over as sort of a podcast recording, right? I believe. And you did some other cool like audio content that was neat, sort of the journaling of Calvin.
Yeah. Calvin had a journal, and I believe Wayne had a journal entry too, though it has been hard for us to rescue the audio for that one, which I think I've cracked the code. So I'm
Oh my gosh, that's
I'm
very
hopefully
exciting.
going to have figured that out and upload that soon.
Yeah, podcast feed.
So as much as like Shadow is not supposed to be a thing that Invisible Sun is you talk about really, I think the escape from Shadow worked really well as like a little, when we were first starting to get to know a character, kind of all we know before, especially before like the neighborhood building and stuff, is that they escaped Shadow.
Yeah,
That's
the
what we
one
got.
hard fact.
And so it was kind of fun to explore this. And yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's the cool like your character especially. Shayna, was not only Shayna had such an interesting story about why she was in Shadow, how it might be different.
Yeah.
And so I think I was really. It like the whole conversation felt very collaborative between me and the other GM and you about like, okay, what do we want to see in it? You were really great about like what, I forget what I asked you exactly before we went in, but there was some like clarification you gave me that I was like, okay, now I can actually run this. Oh, thank God.
Was it about dealing with the deadening?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because we ended up, did it through Discord.
Yeah.
And Discord has spoiler tags now, so you can put like some bars around some text, and it just blacks it out. And like not having to even like touch the deadening, but still like acknowledge the like significance and like the like emotional weight that like deadenings can carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Adir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you often play trans characters in role-playing games?
So it really depends. So right now, I'm in the games that I'm in. I'm playing explicitly trans characters in A Woman with Hollow Eyes. In this tabletop game of Werewolf run by Steve Discont that I know he talks about sometimes on Session Zero podcast. He talks about our werewolf game sometimes. And that's a good podcast. You should listen to it. But I honestly don't often play trans characters in things. I'll often just sort of like be like, all right, my character is trans, then just sort of like move on and not really like truly bring it into the story.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to do that and to like focus on that.
Yeah,
and that aspect of it.
Have you seen it as like an act of expression or more an act of exploration? Like being able to look at different aspects of your experience from somebody else's perspective, or try to explain your experience through an artistic presentation of a character?
Well, I mean, my therapist definitely thinks it's good.
Whatever's happening, that's working.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's definitely can be like kind of tough to like engage and grapple with that, and oftentimes doing role-playing games is about like a escape, a movement to somewhere else where you don't have to deal with that issue, but at the same time going to and like viewing the issues that affect yourself are really important, and sort of gaining that like perspective and self-reflection.
It's one thing. I was having this conversation with Alex Roberts recently about this being an extent of the power fantasy aspect of role playing. Like a lot of the time, I've played more than one game based on trauma that's happened in my past. That like I surprised myself like by enjoying the experience in the ways that I enjoyed the experience and the ways that it did not harm me. And to me, I felt like this is an extent of the power fantasy of role-playing, of being able to hold something that is kind of a dangerous thing or does touch like intimate places and vulnerable places. And I don't know, like having that be at arm's length, or having the ability to examine that like from a different perspective. To me, it just felt like, yeah, that's a power fantasy.
That's really interesting.
All right, yeah. I don't know if I agree with that. I'll be honest.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't view it as a power fantasy. I view it as like when I do things like that, since I like am very much steeped in this sort of like LARPing background, things like that. I think about like receiving good bleed.
I was hoping we'd get to talking about bleed. I have some bleed questions.
Yeah, and like. Bleed is a very cool, interesting concept. There are some episodes on it on Session Zero right now, which
really
I just talked
ones.
about. It's a good podcast, and like you can receive good bleed. A lot of people only talk about bleed in the negative, like oh, I don't want to do this because I don't want to experience bleed. But lots of times. I will go into and do a scene or something like that to be like, no, I want to receive that bleed to be able to deal with and process and like experience that emotion. But like, receive bleed safely, kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can, I love the idea of bleed a lot. And so just for anyone who might not be familiar with the term, I'm going to do my half butt-cheeked version of it. But it's bleed can be when you are taking emotions or experiences from outside of the game into the game. So like I got fighting with my sister and I come in and I'm sort of still in that emotional state, or I'm bringing that into the story, maybe where it's productive, maybe where it's not, right? So there's sort of outside stuff coming in, and there's also inside stuff like, you know, I have some romantic arc or something, and I'm still feeling like, you know, emotional or vulnerable or tender, or maybe that's made me process something happening outside my life in a new way, and so it can bleed out. Would that be kind of a fair?
Yeah, I would say that's very fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I left these sessions, especially this season, and I haven't figured out why. in a much better mood than I came in. And I think part of it's like I'm rushing to get here, and it's like across the city, and I'm always like, I've had a full work day, and I have like meetings that are always running late and threatening to make me late for this. And so I think I was always just like harried and had stuff going on and never felt like I prepped enough. And then I get here and we play, and by the time I'm walking out the door, I always felt like just like way happier, and I think like, I don't know, something about it might be that like the kind of emotions that we got to play with in this story were really like powerful, right? It was big feelings. It was big tragedy and heartbreak. It was big like tenderness and connection, and it was big goofy silliness. And I think like when I'm just like super steeped in my work, I kind of forget how to engage with emotions. And now I'm like, oh, I got to touch all these delicious emotions. I feel like a human again. So I think that's part of it. Also, you are just fantastic storytellers, so it's a joy to be a part of this. But do you folks want to talk at all about the experience of Bleed, or like how playing the game affected you at all?
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of interested in this Bleed thing because I have, I think, a pretty bad gauge for when I'm experiencing Bleed in games. Like, the only time that I've really been able to quantify it is like playing a game of Star-Crossed, where like explicitly there's romantic emotions on the table, and the whole game is kind of a flirty experience. Right. So and that's the point of Star-Crossed as like an engine for what it wants you to do. So I've definitely walked away from sessions of Star-Crossed feeling like, well, yeah, I felt a little flirty during that, and that was all good and happy and fun.
Yeah.
In other games, I find it hard to pinpoint. Kat has pointed out to me a couple of times after a campaign, like particularly after intense episodes that I was feeling Bleed. So I don't think I've got a good thermometer for it. I feel like there wasn't intense things, but I certainly felt good after playing this. I love playing games generally, though, so it's hard for me to say that like, oh yeah, this is some good Bleed, or I just had a great time because I felt like I put in a good performance and told a good story with my friends.
Yeah.
I didn't really sort of have that much Bleed with Shayna, aside from the one sort of like text development session. But like, what I definitely was sort of like able to get out of it was a like sense of freedom. Like I didn't necessarily have a lot of like Bleed with like Shayna's like emotions and things like that, but with like her actions and like her viewpoint on the world was great, because she just doesn't give two shits. And I could give less of a shit about a lot of different things.
I mean, certainly fun to like see injustice and be like, hang the consequences. I'm gonna do something about it.
Yeah.
Stab some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely find myself drawn to characters like that. Because like, I mean, like part of like what I like get like paid for is like my day job is like very like worrying, meticulous, like work stuff.
Vance stuff.
Yeah. I do a lot of stuff with spreadsheets. Like if I'm going to like have fun, which role-playing games are fun, then I'm gonna do the exact opposite of that. And so it is very similar to what Darcy's talking about with like coming from work and like having this being on like a weeknight. It is like a wonderful, just like de-stressor to come and talk.
There was one particular episode that like I wish I'll have to go back and like figure out which day it was and like what was happening in my life. But it was the development mode we started out with of Librelight. Like it was a really tender Librelight development mode with you.
We had a couple, but
I think it must have been the memory one.
Yeah.
Because it was just like I remember like the I think both, whatever development mode we did with you too was kind of like high. I was like swept up in the emotion more than I usually get, in a way that felt really good. It felt like very like, it felt good to be able to give that character those characters and that story that I really like valued. It felt good to like get to express that on screen, because I'm not like, I'm not an improviser, I'm not an actor. Like I like to facilitate a lot, but it means I don't step into the acting role very strongly, and so I think I felt much more in those bones than I had felt in most scenes, and so that was really a cool experience for me, I think. Just talking about the way we emotionally engage with this, I think.
Yeah, I want to dig down on those scenes a little bit, because there was a great moment of behind-the-scenes support that Darcy gave to me as a performer and a player in that scene. Going into it, I can't even... All I remember is that it was like an intense scene that we were going into after a break.
Okay.
And like we knew it beforehand.
Okay.
And so we sort of talked through that this was going to be a real talk between these characters, and like a more serious talk between these characters. And Darcy had said, thinking about these characters, I just want these two queers to make it.
Yeah.
Like I don't want. I will not be burying these queers.
Yeah.
And to me, as a player and a performer, hearing my GM say that was like, okay, I don't need to be defensive. I can feel free to be vulnerable and to invest in this scene, because we're still following the plot, where the plot is going to go, but we don't want to hurt each other or hurt these characters. Like I had absolutely no interest in seeing Calvin or Librelite like hurt this season. In emotionally, I mean physically, whatever, they get hurt all the time. But like, I didn't know that I could deal with that. So like, being able to have that check-in and be like, okay, we are about to do this thing, and it's going to be a real ass thing that we're going to do. But hearing that Darcy's objective for that scene is like,
what the stakes were exactly.
Yeah, like the stakes still felt real and emotional, but it didn't feel like. I don't know. It felt like, because I knew that not even a safety net, because I knew that we were on the same page,
I felt play like up to the line a bit.
Exactly. I could dig into it more. Whereas if I didn't have that, I might have been more reserved.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
It's almost like checking in and talking about in communication is like a safety mechanic. Wow.
I wish somebody would write a book with a chapter about that.
Yeah. But yeah, hi, I'm Adira Slattery. I like emotionally hurting my characters.
Shocking everyone.
Yeah. So as a person who has like a very different reaction to like harming my characters emotionally than what James was talking about with like, I don't want these characters to be hurt and things like that, I'm always just like, like, fuck me up. like I am playing a character and they have a love interest, kill them. Just ruin them. I find my sort of looseness with that and like readiness to let my character be hurt. It's just like very freeing. And it really lets me like drive games like I stole them.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. I love like loss. I think loss in role playing games is just so powerful. Because you see what pieces we collaboratively put on the table, and you can. I love getting to see what people bond with, and of course, pulling on those heartstrings is really powerful for me. But like, there were 2 points that I was really worried about. I did a lot of check-in with like dealing with like treating the trans narratives well. I think I was like, poor Adira had to put up with a lot of like, I just don't want to fuck it up. Please. Like, I know I need to like be a GM and like make decisions and do interesting things. You were very good about managing my emotions, which hopefully I will not have to, now that I have done it once, hopefully I'll feel a little more stronger in that area. But I was like, James got married not that long ago, you might know. And so I was very conscious of the fact that like one of your strongest allies, one of the strongest NPCs in the game, which ordinarily like, it's a new season, shake things up, like what feels safe, playing with what feels safe and moving that around. I think that's how I like to shake things up, But I was like, I just like I don't want that story. Like first of all, like me, I like that being. I like that they've already been through so much. I was like, let them have their like beautiful marriage. Like, and if the story took it elsewhere, I'd be okay with it. But that wasn't the thing I wanted to push. And partly because like I don't think I ever checked in with you about this, but I was just like, I know James got married recently. Like that just feels like a weird thing to do to your friend who just got married. Is like take away their husband. I was like, I just can't do that. But I tortured your character in many other ways, and your relationship had lots of challenges.
Very much so.
And I was really nervous about the kid thing, not because of you or anything particular, but because like people have emotions around kids.
Yeah.
And I was really, I think I took very slow steps and tried to watch your reaction. And I think like I told you off screen too, like. I haven't decided exactly what's happened to the kid.
Yeah.
Don't worry. The kid is not, whatever's happened is like not dead.
Yeah,
it's just a new player has entered the field and it's sad that they're not there right now. Like, I don't know what else. I hadn't made a lot of decisions about that yet because I wanted to see how the characters reacted and still had to figure out some details myself anyway because lots of this is by my pants.
The conversation that we had basically right after you introduced the kid and you were just like, I am not killing this kid was also great.
This is one of the things that I actually really appreciated and why I like producing stories more than I like consuming them. Like I'm not that into dramatic television shows. Like I don't watch a lot of hour-long dramas. I don't watch a lot of dramatic movies or emotional movies. I don't like how chaotic they are and how it feels like characters don't talk to each other. So when I get to produce it, I get to hold on to the things that I think are important. Like I honestly, when I watch a television show where two characters are in a stable relationship and the show threatens that relationship, I'm like, this is boring. This is boring and bad because either you're going to keep this relationship and this means nothing, or you're going to break up this relationship and I'm invested in this relationship. Like it makes me so mad that it feels like so many writers can't write a stable relationship that is enduring strife.
And dynamic.
Yeah. Which is one of the things that I like about this. It's like, okay, if we're setting we're not going to separate these two, if we're not going to kill these two,
what are the other ways
how do we
play?
explore? Yeah. And like, I think Calvin had a pretty rough go of it this season, even without all that. So, like, the show didn't feel not dramatic to me, even though there were these limitations that, like, might not have been explicit to the audience, but, like, as a performer, I felt comfortable with.
How did you feel, another relationship that, I guess one of my high points about this season was, like, getting to see your character, like, just deepen and deepen, right? I loved how, like, to me at least, how, like, even and fully developed and, like, full of weird connections to the city and you've got your own stuff going on. Like, I loved how that grew. And then I loved how your characters felt each other out and found, would test some ground and see if that was stable and maybe it wasn't. And so they went and, found, with the constraint that, like, that's another kind of line we sort of drew, like, I'm not going to kill these queers. Another line was, you guys have to be in the same room again, ideally friends. And so you played and found places to test that constraint, but also make my life not miserable by making it work. And found,
When I first pitched this character to Darcy, I had no clue about that I was pitching all these things that I was supposed to not talk about in the show at all, of like, oh yeah, my character used to fight on the other side of the war, and like did all of these different things. I had no clue. I was just like, ooh, these are interesting aspects of the setting. I want to engage with those. It seems like the book doesn't engage them that much. That gives me a lot of room to play. But also, Darcy at one point sort of like checked in with me and was like, hey, how evil is Shayna? Like, how much of a bad lady is she? And it was sort of like, it sort of gave me this moment where I sort of like got to have a bit of a sort of perspective on the character. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, like, I didn't view her as being evil, but she was doing a lot of bad shit. And then we talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, check in with your players, everybody.
You're seeing a lot into like Darcy's anxiety. This is like the Darcy's anxiety episode. But I'm like, you both were so great about sort of helping me navigate those tricky spots.
I had so much fun establishing that relationship.
Yeah.
Like talking
Yeah.
about season 2 shakeups. In season
yeah.
1, Calvin was such a force of chaos. And he was
Yeah.
like that accidentally. He didn't know how anything worked. And he didn't behave properly at all. It caused so much trouble. We had all these plans, and Calvin found a way to disrupt all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you watch that season again, or if you're listening through it again on the podcast, like, you know how many times they establish very simple plans as a group, and something Calvin does derails it without trying at all. Like, nobody intended it. So he was such a big force of chaos. And in this season, there were a lot of times where Calvin had to be the adult in the room.
Yeah.
He didn't know anything
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
It's like his clothes are turning into birds and he's running around the city trying to collect them. But he had to be with Shayna like, no, we're not gonna stab people. We can't solve our problems by murdering these people. Which is a fun position for Calvin to be in. It really changed like the character's default dynamic and allowed me to explore the character in a new space in a fun way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so this season being my first experience with Invisible Sun, it's been very interesting, like learning and reading and experiencing more and more about the different sorts of games people run in this setting and with this system, and finding just how like tonally opposite my character is from basically everything that everyone else is doing.
You mean across other streams too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just where like a lot of people in this seem to sort of be like, all right, we're going to do a little bit of planning, going to do a little stuff, do a little of this. And Shayna is just like, grab Calvin by the back of the coat, pulls out a knife, we're going to just go to town.
Yeah.
I think that is a thing that, like, playing the amount of Blades in the Dark that I've played now has really entirely ruined any concept of planning in a game that I play in. Whenever anyone's like, let's plan this thing, I'm like, no,
Or
action now.
Let's do this.
I'm already out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. I feel like that kind of action-oriented stuff has been a Woman with Hollow Eyes sort of staple.
Yeah.
And for me, I think a part of that comes from doing one-shot for so many years that because
Write it like you stole it.
Yeah, most of my role playing happens in a
Got one
confined
shot.
space, and it's like, no, we got to do this. Things have to happen now.
Yeah.
They have to happen immediately because we've got to wrap this up in 4 hours, and it's got to be a good show.
Oh, yeah.
So like it felt like there was a mentality of that at the table, and like, you know, last season Alan would make such huge choices, and it felt like we preserved that spirit. One of the wild things, and I've remarked on this behind the scenes to both Darcy and Adira, is that even though the cast is like very different and the characters are very different, this still felt like the same show in like wild ways that I would not have been able to predict.
Yeah. I don't think it's my doing, because I don't do much. So.
I certainly didn't help.
I didn't watch all of the season before I started playing.
Smart choice. Clearly, Monte Cook is magic, as I told him in the Slack recently. I did not appreciate.
Yeah,
But I was like, you could attest to all you want to data, but
you goddamn sorcerer.
sorcerer. Anyway.
So let's talk about sorcery a
Yeah.
little bit, because again, as has happened, as is A Woman with Hollow Eyes tradition, there was a lot of coincidental lining up of our plans as players and your plan as a GM.
Oh my gosh.
And the meta of the setting.
Yeah. That was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle to like, as a scientist, let me start there. I have a certain penchant for at least trying to boil things down to root causes and to understand patterns and to understand that I'm a biased human with a weird brain that evolved over millennia and likes to find pattern where there might not be any. I get all of that. And I think like, I'm just curious, the deeper I dig, right, because I only discovered these secrets of the meta plot of the setting, right, the important secrets about the setting that we were accidentally engaging with. I only found out about them so late. Now I'm curious to like look back and how much can be attributed to the fact that this weird game was designed so much with the idea that there would be these layers and recalling components. You know, every Sooth card has, you know, clocks and cats and whatever, right? It has these elements that you'll find in the art and you'll find in the book. And I think so much of the game is built that way, where there is spooky resonance happening all over the place. And so, like, you know, I just wonder, as people, like, I would just be very curious to know. But, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. Like, I would be curious to know if you ran Invisible Sun and the GM foolishly had not read the secrets folder, if you had, like, 12 invisibles, you know, a woman with hollow eyes, how often would we find our way there? But then I've watched a ton of streams and it has never come up in anything I've seen. But it might be, but like, I'm not hearing about that really. So.
It's really, really interesting. I felt like so much of the character development across both seasons that I did with Calvin was very inspiration-based in the moment. Like, Calvin having a previous life as like kind of an adventuring hero was something that happened in a development mode scene in season 1 that Darcy wasn't present for, because like it was just flashing back to Kitty's past, and I was just trying to, what's something interesting and surprising that I could do? And I was like, oh yeah, here's a super competent version of Calvin. I didn't think of any consequences or any way that I would have to justify that in the future. And like, what Calvin deciding that he wants to make his own son as a character happened just after we did this boat thing, like traveling between the suns. And Darcy said, oh yeah, there are fragments of unfinished suns out there. And I was just like, that's it. That's the thing that I've been looking for. I want to make a sun because there are scraps of suns out there. And like all of that stuff just sort of happened accidentally because of like, you know, in spur of the moment decisions that like came out of you saying something. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I want that.
Katamari Damacy style, you know, rolling and picking it up and figuring out how it fits together later. Is that something that you felt that like you saw in your character too? Were there any moments where like you made decisions that maybe were spur of the moment or surprised you? Or like you had such a, you know, your character concept like had such a strong goal for this season too, that I think like, I wonder if that momentum means you weren't like warbling around these other places where like figuring out like what is Calvin even doing? What is he even about? Was sort of, you know, a process, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't really warble about that much, I'll be real. And I think if the season was a little longer, I would have gotten a little more.
We didn't have a lot of breathing room this season.
Sort of chance to warble around a bit more, because like, sort of like of the sum total of A Woman with Hollow Eyes, Shayna has existed for a section of it. That like. I was just sort of in for and doing a lot of the sort of like directed sort of things for the character. The most like warbling around that I sort of got to do was like some of sort of like the early development mode stuff with like the void punks and things like that.
Yeah, right.
And then later stuff with Tiora.
Yeah.
That were all like really, really fun. But mostly I just sort of tried to like insert lots of little things sort of as we went along to sort of flesh out a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Like I used the description, like the constantly changing clothes descriptions for Shayna. As like sort of ways to like convey her like mood and like sort of current like mode. Like was she in like a dress or like a suit or a this or a that. It was a lot of fun to just sort of like characterize in only those like sort of specific lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not having Shayna just sort of like have all of the time to sort of run around. Was
found like the cracks to
yeah,
sort of
and it let me sort of like really
nurture.
pull in the things that like I felt were important about the character. Because like fundamentally, like it doesn't really necessarily matter what's in my head about Shayna until it actually shows up in game. So it was fun sort of getting to pick and choose and pull things in and drop things and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wish we had more development modes. I think, my main complaint about this season is that I wish there was more.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I liked the experience of such a tight season, partly because like I wanted to see what that would look like, and I thought like, and you guys, you're shooting for such a big game-breaking meta.
We're touching all the things, all the toys Monty put on the top shelf.
Yeah, knocking it off one by one like cats. So that was really cool, but
Oh, that was a satisfying sound.
that's the sound of resin, I guess.
You don't get that with plastic.
I wonder if there's something hidden inside the hand if we smash it.
People have definitely tried that. Study Darcy's face. Chat. Study Darcy's face. There's a secret in the goddamn hand.
Smash your hand.
I'm not going to smash the hand. I'm not going to smash the hand.
Smash your expensive hand.
It's too expensive.
There are many
Pay a lot of money
secrets-
for this game and then smash it.
There are many secrets hidden within the cube. That is all I'll say. There are many alleged secrets with which Montica Games will neither confirm nor deny.
Take a razor blade to your cube.
People have done that.
Yeah, they have. So Tiora, I kind of wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Like, we talk a lot about Librelite. So we've talked a lot about Librelite so far and that sort of relationship. I was really delighted with like Tiora showing up, just because like I think it was a chance for me to see how this NPC reacted to your character, to Shayna, and like I don't know, it just like gave me like, because of their like flirtiness, it made me think that Shayna was off living this like super cute flirty life with Tiora all the time. Like whenever we were not on screen, I'm like, she's probably hooking up with Tiora in that weird necromancer's cabinet. And I'm like, I don't know, it like brought me so much joy that character sort of emerged. And I think that was an NPC. No, that was actually from one of the few from the actual book.
Yeah.
She's the actual proprietress in everybody's game. So in everybody's game,
she's big and buff and blue.
Yeah.
and
Pink
dating
hair.
Shayna's mom, or at least hooking up with Shayna's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really dug that. I don't know if you had anything to say about like any other important NPCs to you, or what you felt like, whether you were looking for sort of having a romance arc, as that seems to be such a flavor of
The one
with Hollow
shot.
Eyes.
And that
Yeah,
works.
And the
that's
one-shot.
just the network.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily looking for a romantic arc for Shayna. I was sort of like more than happy to have Tiora be like a one-night stand and never come up again.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then she did, and that was fun too.
Yeah. And I didn't plan that. That was just because the district we were in that I had planned.
It's just there.
It was just there. So I was like, well, of course we're happening in this part of the district then.
Yeah. So, like, I had a lot of fun playing through the sort of like little interactions with a bunch of
Yeah.
random NPCs, like the like secretary for the Thaw, when we went in and we're like about to be thrown into jail, and like the I think was that
yeah.
the first real episode?
Yeah, I think so.
Because we picked up right from the development
Yeah.
mode session where we got arrested, and it was it was just a lot of fun interacting with her, and like interacting with just like all sorts of different random NPCs that we would just sort of declare that any of us knew.
Which I loved every time it came up.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think one of my favorite interactions was the development mode that we did. It might have even been the character generation session where the two of you ended up playing Ari Aloha, where we saw Shayna kill the queen.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Just because the two of you were so surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked.
Me
yeah.
too.
And it was a lot of fun to do that to you both.
Yeah.
So wait, I thought that you had worked out backstories, Shayna's backstory before that.
Oh, no.
Wild
I mean,
stuff.
yeah.
Did you know that about Shayna before?
What?
Like before the development mode, that she was like involved with the hate cyst on
Yes.
So
Okay.
yes.
That bit we had worked out.
So wait,
Yeah.
you
But
knew
none of the other details.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I so
the killing her queen. There were a lot of details
Yeah.
that emerged there that I
yeah,
was like,
her previously
how
being a
this goes
Vance.
down.
I knew I wanted Shayna to have been kicked out of one of the orders, but I hadn't picked which one, and I was like, oh, I'll make her a Vance. That seems fun. Then it also being the pristine guard was a thing that like
fucking came together.
yeah. And when Darcy like introduced her to the group and she was like, who's the person that like cares about you the most? The first thought in my head was, I'm gonna kill this person. And I was like, well, who's the person that would have the biggest sort of impact if it was a
Yeah,
person that I
yeah.
cared about? I was like, oh, that queen right there.
Yeah.
Because like if you listen to sort of the recording, I picked the queen and Darcy was like, okay, all right, fine, it's the queen, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Just like, oh, of course, the player picks the like fancy
yeah.
lady, and it was just like great. It was so much fun to do to the two of you.
It was magical, and like trying to figure out how Ari Aloha would react to that, I think is what stumped me the most. Like all the acts, I was like, okay. You know, and we had just had the conversation of like, is she evil? No, she's not. But she did kill that queen who is her lover, who cares the most about her. And then, so just like being asked to play Ari Aloha. But I think we just played it off as Ari Aloha was as baffled as we were.
Yeah, it was.
Which was fun.
I really wonder what their agenda was going to be for that character.
Yeah.
And we will never know. Well, probably.
Yeah. Oh, a thing I
Yeah.
never touched on textually in the season that relates to Shayna's transness.
Yes.
So in that flashback before the war, Shayna looked like she does now. Like, and it's because in my head, Shayna was always trans. Like before the war, transitioned and everything. And then part of the like erasement spell and like her entrapment into shadow was also effectively torture.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis gender dysphoria, which sucks. But also, you don't need to have dysphoria to be trans, kids.
Yeah.
Anybody
true.
can be trans. Just do it.
Trans, just do it.
We were sponsored by Trans today.
Did you feel that wasn't part of the season? Because I felt like that came through, maybe not explicitly, but it felt like...
I don't think it came through explicitly that Shayna was trans before the war.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it came through explicitly that Shayna was trans. And there are definitely a lot of things where I was talking to a friend of mine who was watching the show, and I mentioned to her that my character's trans. And she was like, "Yeah, you haven't brought it up yet, but like I can tell that because I am also trans, because we're all friends with each other.
We're on a Discord.
Yeah. That
Several
is
Discords.
that is generally what a group of trans people is called, is a Discord. Yeah. And it was like fun and like affirming to hear from her that like she could see the sort of like breadcrumbs that I was dropping
Yeah, cool.
before like I like explicitly stated it
Yeah.
with that text development mode about my character's identity.
Yeah, and how they related to the glasses from Shadow.
mhm,
Ugh,
yeah.
so good.
One question I have about that is the changeries being a thing in Invisible Sun.
Yeah.
Does that affect your perception of seeing a trans character in that space when your perception of yourself can be so mercurial?
Yes. Yeah. So when I was first given the key, and I read through it, and I hit the part about changeries, I was like, oh, this is trans as fuck. I'm in for this bit. So I like very much knew that I wanted to interact with changeries in some fashion. Oh, that is my spouse calling me. I'm going to ignore them and text them.
Very rapidly.
It's hard to do both at the same time.
Give me a second. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. Loading music.
So let's talk about our sponsor, and that's Grimm's Grammary. We hate the books that we have. Please take them from us. Bring the beach.
Oh my god. Tiora is so good.
Yeah. What was I talking about?
Changeries.
Changeries. Yes. It matters a bunch to me because it provides like an easy, like exploration and like interaction with trans narratives. The first trans character that I played, I never named as trans, but hindsight is 20/20. I was playing a changeling in Eberron back in 3.5 in high school.
Nice.
And the character was named Soggy Jeb because I got water on my character sheet.
Yes.
But most everyone just called the character Jeb. And at one point, the character that I was playing took the form of a female assassin who had been trying to kill us, and then I was impersonating her. And the character just sort of stayed in that body for the rest of the campaign. And it was just sort of because it was more useful and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And partway through that game, I ended up coming out to the person, the GM who was running the game as trans. And it was just like role-playing games, talking about bleed and things like that. It's a great way to experience those different sorts of issues. And like there are a lot of people as well who sort of in their lives would like to be more mutable, would
Yeah,
like to
absolutely.
to like be able to experience a lot of those different changes that like meat bodies are kind of slow at doing, and not always great at, but that things like clothes and makeup can approximate, and can like pull off some crazy stuff where somebody is like in a very like mask-coded presentation one point, and a very like femme-coded presentation another time, and like all sorts of different presentations in between, that like sort of letting you sort of like extend and pull that out into like physical body changing and things like that is real good, and I like it. And I don't, so one of the things that you sort of, I think originally said with the question was like, how do you view a trans narrative in the vein of something where there is this thing that makes it very immutable and almost sort of like very easy to do?
Yeah.
Because like transitioning in like many parts of the world is like incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I am very lucky to be in Chicago when I wanted to begin taking hormones. I walked into Howard Brown, who are great, and I walked out, and had hormones. I walked in, walked out.
That's
Yeah.
great. Wow.
And it's called informed consent, and more places should do it.
Nice.
Like, that is not how things work for
Right.
a vast majority of the world. Like, it is nice to have things that sort of like remove that barrier and things like that. And just because there are people who are changing their bodies a whole bunch and doing all this weird changery stuff, doesn't mean that like you can't still just like be a boring binary trans person. And it's nice to be boring.
Yeah. I was curious if I had changeries as a bigger part of like, you know, especially in like in a home game or something.
Yeah.
I was curious about changeries could become a place where it like could get real jokey.
Yes.
And that's something that I don't think the book really. I think like the way they lay out the options, there's lots of like strange and interesting choices.
Yeah.
But like the book definitely doesn't like present it as a jokey opportunity. But I could see with like some players, you know,
I mean, if you look at the
taking
art,
it really goofy, right?
one of the pieces of art, like there is somebody whose like upper body is like a factory.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like complicated. Like there's a lot of like nuanced, interesting stuff that you can do. Like, okay, yeah, my character had this done to their physical form
Right.
because they feel it expresses something
Right.
about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, and that is, I think, very tied up in a similar vein, but. You know, that is part of the rhetoric that is bad
I know,
around
right?
trans stuff, and does feel like it could easily enter a place of making light. So that's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could definitely get into some spaces that are very like transmedicalist as well. Which for people following along at home, transmedicalism is the view that people like need to like use hormones and surgery and things like that, and that you don't have to do that if you're trans. You can
Well, yeah, and insist that other people, in order to be trans, have
Yes.
to do that, which is
yeah.
not.
A lot.
Anytime, hey, guess what? Anytime you're butting your opinions into somebody else's gender identity, it's probably bad.
Don't.
Yeah, fuck true scum. So like at the same sort of time, it's incredibly important in my vein to provide safe places to play with gender.
Yeah.
And like being able to do something funny and comedic with
Yeah.
a changery is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think it is always good, and that's one of the cool
a
things
great
about
point.
role-playing games, right? Is it is a space where you get to play around with different things. Like I know there are, I think every male person that I've ever talked to in a role-playing space has played at least one character that was not their gender, whether they were playing someone who identified as female or whether they were playing somebody that couldn't be defined by gender at all. I think role-playing games really like provide that beautiful, safe space to explore in that way. And you know, even if they're not thinking of a trans narrative as part of it, like that can be a good part of that exploration. Like,
Yeah.
putting yourself in another body is good.
I also think that development mode can help with that a lot. Like, I feel like I get so much personal input from players when I do a development mode because it's one-on-one. I feel like that as a GM, I guess I'm just thinking if I was going to run this for like a big group of my, you know, not in front of camera players, development modes would help me figure out what is like kind of serious and important to the player and to that character. And that sort of can help me inform, hey, if some people are like using this trip to the changery as like kind of a fun, jokey experience, if I know one of the other characters has sort of been, you know, hinting that they want to like, that they have some story they want to tell around this changery, right? Like I can kind of modulate that tone. So I think development mode provides a structure for people who might not be ready to do lots of the anxiety-related check-ins that I like to do. Of like, so for, you know, I think that's how I would kind of modulate that.
Yeah, but I mean, development mode is like really, really good, but it's also really good just to explicitly tell people things.
Yes.
We sort of briefly talked before the season, not in a way that was like formalized lines and veils, but in a way that very much felt similar to it. That is a like important thing to like always think about when you're playing games.
So a question that I have, just for everybody in the group, what was a fun role-playing moment? What was a cool thing that you did? I'm really going to challenge you. That you did. You've really got to be able to praise yourselves here, or something that you enjoyed. Like maybe not even something that you thought was good, but something that you enjoyed doing. For me, one of those experiences was very late in the season, I think literally just the last episode. Getting to play around with Calvin's different hearts was
that was so
much
cool.
fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing Storm Calvin.
Man. Yeah, it was, and I love other players stepping into characters, and that's been a thing that has been a Woman with Hollow Eyes thing.
Yeah.
Like Alan and I would trade characters back and forth. I think Kat did at least a sampling of Seven at some point. So it getting to shift characters back and forth is something that happens a lot in improv, or can happen in improv, and is just so much fun and doesn't happen that often at role-playing tables. So Calvin having the different hearts was very cool, because it was a challenge as an actor to go, okay, we've got this core character. What makes this character who they are? Because I figured high anxiety was a trait that was specifically Stormheart Calvin. All of the times that I played Calvin in his past in the first season, before I knew that he had different hearts, mind you.
Yeah.
Gallant Calvin was Gallant Calvin. He was confident. He wasn't nervous about things. He didn't talk very quickly the way that Calvin does. He carried himself differently. When I found out midway through the season, I went to Darcy and I was like, I think it was either before, I can't remember, there was a moment where Calvin had the realization on camera. He says, I wear my heart on my sleeve. And that's when it got locked into the character. I can't remember if I realized it before or after, but I did go to Darcy and go, hey, this is the thing that's happening. And trying to decide what the core of that character was. I looked at the different hearts. You can see me on camera looking at the different hearts. And if you see an emotion change on my face during that moment where it fell, or I got drawn in some way, it was because I saw that Stoic was one of the hearts, and I was just trying to suss out, what the hell does Stoic Calvin look like?
Yeah.
How can I possibly keep the same character if those are the traits that I have to work with?
I think you
it came
did
out
it.
so well. Yeah.
I think it worked out really well. I am so curious as to and I don't even know that we'll see it. The final heart is what? Empathetic heart or
Empath?
Empath. Yeah. What is empath Calvin like? Because there's a lot of non-communication.
Yeah.
But Calvin is also a very tender and open kind of person. So I'm very curious to see what that would be like.
Oh, that was really great. Do you have any moments that you're particularly proud of or stand out as something you're really happy about? Or surprised by?
Or just had fun with?
Yeah. I mean, I had fun whenever I was getting to stab stuff.
So frequently.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun.
I love the crazy items you ended up amassing.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. It made me so happy.
Yeah. I think all of my favorite bits were times where I shocked you guys.
Oh.
So
Frequently.
Yeah. So in the last episode where I just went, oh, I deserve this one, and then I chopped off the guy's head.
Oh yeah.
Or any of the bits where Darcy's like, how do you guys react to the situation? And Calvin's like, I do this complicated thing. And I go, I pull a knife. We're just great. And it was just so much fun to get to play the depths of this character. Because a comment that I got from Terry after we did the development mode is he was like this character is like in a different place than Shayna, but still it's still like this is very much Shayna, and it was like sort of great to like receive that messaging of like being internally consistent, because I worry sometimes that like characters that I play that are like Shayna, that are very like out there, go with the flow, aren't always internally consistent.
It's a character type that is kind of like an infamous character type amongst role players of being hard to work with or not fun to play against. Like I think of, I don't play a lot of Vampire, but I think of the Malkavian clan often and how I dislike it. Because it leads to a character type that doesn't feel internally consistent, that doesn't feel driven by an understandable base, because it's trying to encourage you to be in this space. Like all of the characters that I've played with that are, I call like the stabby thief. The stabby thief is always stealing from their friends and is always stabbing people when we should be like not doing that, and does not have the party's goals in mind. It was very cool playing with Shayna because you had that mentality, but were also easy to work with. Like, which is a hard thing to pull off, as evidenced by the dozens of people I've played with that have not.
Yeah, and like, I love that, survival is such a thread of Shayna's character, right? It's that, like, I almost feel like, it just made me so happy that you found kind of the narrative that would explain or support that front, right? And that like I don't know, it was really cool to have a character type that you see all the time done poorly, like finally like realized as a character. It was so cool.
This is very like
We said no tenderness at this table.
All business.
All very serious
That's us
business.
three. If you know us as people, no tenderness, all business. The stoic heart, as we are known.
Yeah.
The deathless triumvirate.
How did we never do that? Anyway.
I don't know.
Darcival, what about you?
So first of all, I want to thank all the backers who brought in amazing contributions. Oh my goodness, it was such a delight getting to work from that it just built the show in a beautiful way. We used some of the threads from season 1 too. So I just had so much fantastic material to work with, despite the fact that many people, especially from season 1, the game wasn't out yet. We were playing and the game wasn't out yet. So like the fact that people, like the aesthetic that we built and how well it's played with the material when we got it is just miraculous and lovely. And I'm so happy that the season 1 backer document came out as beautifully and useful as it is. So I'm excited for other people to get to have some of the experience that I had, getting to pull together these amazing group contributions. And I also want to especially thank the people who like helped me design episodes and locations. Oh my goodness. I do a lot of my jamming. A lot of my jamming prep is like, I don't run a lot of campaigns, first of all. Like my shtick is like, do a one shot. Everybody drives it like they stole it. Everything goes off in one episode, right? And so I struggle a little bit like seeing longer arcs, and I usually like just react to stuff in the moment and then later have to figure out how it all fits together. And I love when I can get that moment where I figure out how the puzzle actually fits, but I do my best work when I get to talk to people about it. And so I feel like anything I'm going to be proud of or happy about is something that is just so collaborative in a way that I love. But some happy moments where I never knew how important it was going to be for me to play an enormous like cephalopod creature with like a cozy tea room in a weird
Apollo
cave.
was so
Cuddly.
A
man.
cuddly little thing. And I totally forget what voice I did for them the first time, and I was so mad because I tried to give them a voice. But I just love that character, and I love that like you went back to them and like they kind of were important. I was just, that made me so happy.
That character is very important to Shayna, yeah.
Right? And it was cool to have that relationship.
Yeah.
Oh.
I liked how that character and Shayna fell in and like felt like old friends from the first scene.
Yes,
like watching it
absolutely.
was very cool for that reason. And also like having the big like Lovecraftian god character be like a snuggly kind of old queen. It was just good.
Yeah.
It was just very good.
I loved
Yeah.
her so much. And then the other thing I was going to point out was like, I felt really proud of myself in a way that I usually don't when I thought of the like, you know, how do I, ways that basically the very simplistic like pun of like Calvin's trying to build a son and Calvin built a S-O-N offspring, which is a son, right? Like I
Seeing
love
Chet like figure that out was
Chet
so
was-
great.
Yeah, so I'm not really like a pun person, and like that kind of stuff, it just didn't feel like a thing that I could have thought of or pulled off, and like that one was kind of genuinely mine, and I did a lot of like pitching ideas off of some of the other contributors to help me sort of flesh it out and figure it out, but I was really happy because like it just fits so well with you walking the path of sons, and like the fact that there's all these layers of metaphor that I don't engage with in a very deep way, which is why I'm really eager to see more other people jam it and get to play it. Especially like Adira, like if you would run some Invisible Sun, man, it would be transcendent. It would be so cool. But so I don't really engage with the deep layers of metaphors. We sort of see what comes up, but I don't push for it. And one of the metaphors is that the path of sons is not only the path that magic flows through, it's not only places that you can visit, it's the map to the human soul. And I've never had any inkling about what the hell that meant. It's not like talked about, it's just mentioned in the book. And I was like, oh my God, it's the map to the human soul. You're trying to create a son. Like, and so I was just so happy when I came up with that. Yeah.
It is wild to me that that all that was coming together, and like also accidentally I started doing
Yep.
this thing where, oh yeah, Calvin is collecting the hearts.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
it fits. It
Yeah,
fits so
right.
well as a puzzle piece.
Yes.
Man, collaboration is very cool, and I don't
Yeah.
understand how we did it.
No.
It's a magic trick that we pulled on ourselves.
That's like the tagline, I feel like, of this whole show for me.
Yeah.
What do you know what episode you were in when you figured out that's what you were doing? Was it before we started the season?
Oh, it was
Like-
definitely after we started the season. I bet I could pinpoint it, but let's see. I think it was pretty close to right before I had the sort of reveal with Liber because like I loved the idea so much that like I think that was a period when I was having a lot of the conversations with some of the backers and stuff, and so I was like, this is the little nugget of sand that I'm itching on, you know, that's just like, I can't get out of my head trying to think how this would work. And so of course it came up in conversations, and then I was like, well, we have a couple more episodes to go, so like we gotta
Let's
pop this
jam it
off.
in there somehow.
Yeah, so
Very cool.
yeah, I was really happy with it.
Since we mentioned backer contributions, I wanted to give another shout out to that and how much fun I had with the ephemera objects this season.
Oh yeah.
I changed some of them spiritually.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the Book of You, I think, is a great example of that because, like, really cool object.
yeah.
Really buck wild object to have around Calvin. And being able to combine that with Sophie, who's like just a fun little aside character that really just started to grab hold just
Yeah.
towards the end of season 1, like being able to mash those up, that was like just such a liberating thing when I was handed that card and I was like, really? This delicious gift has fallen into my lap? It's so good.
Yeah, I have a like guilty moment, which is that I didn't use one of the ephemera. It involved crushing a cicada shell to like shunt yourself out of the way of something or things like
Oh,
that.
that's very
And you
cool.
left like a shell behind. And it wasn't one of the ones that was called out as like, this was like the one that a backer like really wanted
Right,
in, or
right.
like was their only
Yeah,
their
we
only
probably used our
contribution
other
or something
one.
like that. Like but I had it for like games.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I kept just like holding on to it and being like, no, I want to make all of these super
Yeah.
cool, because like whenever I got to bring one of them in, they were always really cool and really impactful. That like this thing which was like super useful, I just sort of kept feeling like, no, I'll save it for later. Like
Oh, yeah.
I'll save it for later. It's the item in your Final Fantasy inventory
Yeah.
that you
Yep.
never use when
The
you beat
Final
the game.
Fantasy effect,
That like was just like Feels so sad.
I think, as a GM, I would have loved to have been like, I don't know where the bandwidth would have existed because I was like struggling to keep all these threads together enough. But like, if I had kept better track of like the year ephemera, like I could have known that you'd been holding on to that and sort of pushed it a bit. But also, I love the delight of being absolutely flabbergasted and surprised and shocked at every time you brought an ephemera object up because like, I technically like typed them all up and everything. I touched each one, but like I forget what nonsense you folks have amassed by the next episode. So getting to have the reveals like as a GM is also a big part of the delight for me.
I mean, man, getting to use an ephemera object that I was given as Sebin was so much fun.
Yeah.
Because getting put in that situation where I was like playing that character that I did not expect to be playing. I thought we were going to be talking to a different guy in that scene altogether. And like I was flailing for what to do. And I think if you go back and you watch the video, like when I realized like, oh, I'm sort of negotiating for this, I don't know how to do it. I looked down at the ephemera objects and as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, this character has an agenda. This is just an ability that Sebin has, and that's how I'm gonna play this. So it was really cool that, and I understand that sort of almost paralysis that you get when you get a really cool ephemera object because you can see the shape of that moment.
Yeah.
I got the Book of You from session 1, and I was like, this is going to be super cool. It's so cool, and it will answer questions in such a way, I have to make it happen in a later episode.
I got the Hand of Mourning, the candle, the banishing candle in episode 1. And I used it like literally the end of the season.
Scene.
Yeah, and I actually entirely forgot that it was shaped like a finger bone when I was like, oh, and I'll be hiding it in my finger. And then I pulled off the finger and I was like, oh, this is a finger bone. Good job,
Monty, you did it again.
Backer. Backer wizard. Yeah.
Backer wizard. Oh my gosh. Let's see. I don't know where to. I have so many questions always. So is there anything about your character? Is there any like moment that you were expecting to get to that we never did, or like something that you imagine happened but kind of off stage? Anything like kind of that you'd hoped to bring, or that you think would be really cool, something to like draw the curtain back a little bit for backers?
One of the things that I kind of appreciate about Calvin as a character from season 1 into season 2 is there are moments that I, as a player, imagined for him, of him reaching a stage where he's come into his own, and it's not just him like showing off potential. It's him doing something with competence and like being the thing that he has spent so much time building himself into. And what's great is we get hints of that, but they've always been undercut in some way. Like Calvin activating the fire ability that he has. Like it's happened like I think 2 or 3 times now, and he like loses it very quickly, or like it does something really cool and impressive, and the scene is over. It doesn't really steep in it, but like I have this vision in my head of Calvin enshrined in gold flames, surrounded by his different hearts. The blazing buttons on his suit and birds all around, and it's like a thing that I know lives within this character. And he could do almost at any time, but things conspire to keep him grounded, and that's kind of the meta narrative for the character as well. So that's just really cool. It's really cool the way that works out. So like I imagine
the moment the important moment that is kind of important because it doesn't happen almost, and that's right, the way it gets undercut.
Yeah, and like I imagine when that happens, that'll be the last season.
Where do you go from there?
Because you've done it. You've told the story.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. How about you? Any headcanon like off-screen things, or it could be something that you hoped we'd get to see, and maybe it has happened or maybe it hasn't?
Yeah. So a lot of the things that Shayna fought she really very easily dealt with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she's really good
Yes.
at like knives and swords and fighting and things like that.
Yeah.
That like getting to have like a moment where she's sort of like a bit more outmatched
Yeah.
was something that I was more expecting to happen. But like I didn't really think about sort of like how the abilities in Invisible Sun really actually like lay out.
Right.
And like built this character without really knowing any of those things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, this character's just really good at this.
Yeah.
And like it would perhaps be neat to have that like
Showdown, kind of.
yeah. I'm thinking more like part of the problem with sort of Shayna is that like you can do the like crazy 88 scene from Kill Bill
Yeah.
with like Shayna standing in for the
Yeah.
bride, and it would make complete sense
Yes.
of her just killing all of these people and just
Yeah.
really not having much of a problem.
Right.
But like
If they weren't magic users, no chance, right?
Yeah.
It would just be crazy 88.
yeah, that like I was much more excited when we got to some of the Dark Ball stuff,
Yeah.
where there were going to be people who were like throwing serious things at Shayna.
The building.
Yeah, that like I had to sort of stretch my legs a little bit more in
Yeah.
that regard, with as far as like pulling some of Shayna's like tool set together.
Yeah.
But like it would be neat, like to play through sort of like one of the bits of like Shayna being much more on the back foot.
Yeah. That would be pretty
And like
cool.
she was often on the back foot emotionally.
Yeah. Right.
And like socially, and but if she was able to like turn the confrontation into a physical one instead, then like that was where she shined.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm almost imagining like, Shayna in some sort of like Shadow of the Colossus situation, right? Like I feel like the kind of thing, it either needs to be a big weird wizard battle, right? Where like they're pulling in all sorts of surreal effects that you have to like fight your way through or something, or just the enormity of it, right? It has to be kind of wild.
Shayna versus an army.
An environment,
I mean,
know?
Shayna fought Calvin in the past, so that is something that I would want to see.
Ooh, yes.
That
No,
would be
yeah, that
very
would be
cool.
great. I would love to play through that fight.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you, I guess that's not really a question for you. Oh, okay, well, like headcanon stuff. I mean, I'm very curious, and I hope we get to, in the podcast, I hope we get to Seben and this NPC from one of the backer contributors is like
I am
destined
so...
for like cool, powerful ghost lady femme fatale situation, and I don't really know. I don't know what other headcanon we have about it, but during his Dark Ball match, there's like a really cool counterpart for him, and we were imagining what might go down there.
I definitely want to, for the podcast stuff that we're doing, play out that in development mode in some way, because the like little bits that we got of Seb throughout this season, he was on his own journey.
He was, yeah. We just got little moments of it.
And like all of the when I think that happened on camera. I hope it did, because when I realized like all the puzzle pieces were there for just like he's in Dark Ball because a femme fatale drew him in a noir plot. Are you kidding me? That's so good.
Look, I am entirely in to like tonally screw with all the people who listen to Woman with Hollow Eyes and play a femme fatale. So.
Oh, yes. I'm here for it. Please do it, because I cannot play one. I would be happy to dev mode. I I wish I had more capability over the noir like voices and stuff.
Yeah.
but-
Darcy, we just need to play a game where we can practice that.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
It's just a matter of steeping in it.
Yeah, see?
And then you got to learn how to talk fast. Quickly.
No more learning.
Falling apart.
Oh my goodness, no. So one thing that we're kind of doing here is what little I know about LARP, which is extremely little, but a concept I really like is de-rolling. So when you've been like super,
Debrief, yeah.
yeah, when you've been super in a role, like I've been playing the Joker, right? I've been in it. I've been thinking about how the Joker thinks. You might want to, do you want to debrief, talk about it with people you're playing with, and find ways to talk about the character and sort of reestablish like the boundary between me and that character. You know, find the fun places of bleed and accept that and talk about it, but also find the, so I think some stuff we've talked about, you know, stuff we love about those characters. Also things we like to leave behind has been a very helpful tool for me, something I like to do in all my RPGs now. So something I'm happy to take from playing that role and something I'm happy to leave behind. One thing I'm really happy from a role that I got to play was like Lieberlight. Like, I just freaking love that guy. Like, he's so sweet. And like getting to like play negotiating like really hard conversations as like a couple and finding your way through this like these trials, like I felt like I really liked the clear like patience and love and respect that they each had for each other. Like even when stuff was really tough, I felt like that fundamental bit was always there. And I like really liked getting to play a character that had that, right? I think again that was helpful because of the line we set that we're not gonna fucking mess up with these gays, right? They're gonna have they're gonna have trials, but like it's a safe place, so I got to like role play that. A character that like, or character trait that I like really am happy to leave behind is like, let's see, obviously like, we didn't have much Daniel McPherson in this season, but I always felt real skeevy anytime I played him.
Yeah, when he comes back, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. The playing field has changed a bit. I think the thing I felt, the thing I'm happiest to leave behind was playing La Femme. Did not feel good. Did not feel good. Took me a long time to get through that, like, you know, role playing it out and talking it out and trying to get in the headspace of how this awful entity, you know, this awful demon would torture somebody. And I'm like, man, this is maybe not a role that I, in the future, will place myself in. But it just felt like, it just made me feel really bad. And I'm glad to be leaving behind the, like, uncaring carrying out of, like, a sentence I don't believe in, right? Like,
Yeah.
It just felt very bad.
Yeah.
I'm happy I played it. I think it was a really fun scene, and I love that development mode. But I'm happy that stays in the development mode and not with me. So.
I'm happy to leave behind the like arm's lengthness of Shayna. Like Shayna very much like held like everything in her life with this very like specific like almost attachment. Like she was like very emotional and like had a lot of like depth and things like that, but sort of like when it came down to it, the points like where she was like most comfortable were like when like she was at a distance to things.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's a good
of
point.
the way Shayna looks back on the Queen, the way Shayna looks back on her assistant.
Yeah.
Like there are all
Her apprentice Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
these close relationships
Yeah.
that are not.
Yeah.
That
or
blade is sharp
Yep.
with which she severs when she needs to. When she needs to cut and run,
yeah.
she can do it.
Though, man, this is separate to the conversation, but it's so the hate coming back to you and
yes.
Shayna's relationship with the hate. Fascinating how different that was from Shayna's relationship with people.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun with this little brief said about the hate, playing Shayna and referring to the hate as kids.
Yeah.
Doting on the hate.
It was a lot
Yeah.
of fun to do that.
Now, what sort of metaphor are you working with there?
I don't know.
play to find out.
Yeah.
all sorts of metaphors, I'm sure. Yeah, people can vote now on their phones. Yeah, but like the things that like I am like looking forward to like taking with me is like Shayna's like very like flexible spirit.
Yeah.
Like she had a lot of awful things happen to her.
Yeah.
And has like gotten past and through a lot of it. And like I really enjoyed being able to like push along and like just sort of push past things and like not push past,
Bounce back a little bit or
move
react.
through.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, move through things.
Like a hot knife through flesh.
Or anything really.
No, like
Shayna's nice.
like walking through like a waterfall,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah.
Where, like it's not like you're like really breaking or cutting it, like it is absorbing, and you're still like moving past it and like taking it with you in a like healthy fashion.
Yeah, when you said
she
that,
was able to
I
do.
pictured somebody trudging through a river.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And like I'm a person who sometimes struggles with anxiety and like and worry and things like that. That it is like nice to carry more of that with me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Anything?
Yeah, for me, I think one thing that I don't know how much I want to take with me, but certainly a thing that came out of Calvin that I want to explore. Calvin has very clear boundaries. Very like when I decided I was going to play Calvin as a character season 1, I was like, Calvin is a gay character. I am a bisexual person, and a lot of the characters I play are bisexual because that just allows me to invest in a part of myself that like I'm comfortable with and I understand.
Yeah.
Calvin is gay, and he's like specifically that, and he enforces that boundary very naturally.
Yeah.
And he enforces other boundaries that he has that I don't necessarily have very casually and easily. Like Calvin this season, like pretty certainly was like, yeah, I'm a monogamous person.
Yeah.
And like that came out, and that was the character saying that, and that was not
Yeah.
James saying that.
Right.
So like it was neat to see the character enforce those boundaries and how the character, like Calvin as a character, and really all of the characters that I play in role-playing games, sort of drive their own stuff, and they say things more than I say things. And just like, because I am a person who's like very into experiencing things and experimenting around things, having a character who was very upfront about their boundaries and could do that easily and very easily understood themselves in that was really neat. And so that's like something that I do take away and like kind of want to explore and like see, what's in there? What is that self-assurance? Something I am happy to leave behind, ironically, is Calvin's anxiety. Like I have some very specific directed social anxiety, but it's not high energy anxiety. It's more thing like if I go to a party where I don't know people or an event where I don't know people and people don't know me, like it is hard for me to connect and open up, and I can close myself off and not start conversations. Calvin, he gets worried about things, which is not a thing that I do. And it is easy, like trying to, like this is something that I was doing in season 1 too, like forming a central part of Calvin's personality is that he is the storm heart. I tried to express that through the way he talks and the way he acts and everything. And when I started cycling up that anxiety and building it, it felt very easy to follow and leave a path of destruction and chaos behind me. And like you do channel that, right?
Yeah.
So like I think that'll be something that I'm happy to put back on the shelf. I love dipping into Calvin for that, but it's always good to put it away and go back to, unless some technology doesn't happen to work, being fine generally.
Yeah.
I also want to thank Joe, who has been amazing
Yeah.
in making the production of this beautiful show
Joe,
so wonderful.
Joe.
Thank you so much, Joe. Is there anything you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, what do you want to take and leave behind?
He doesn't
Joe?
have a mic over there, I don't think. I tell him to put a mic over there, but he always puts it back. I'll never keep it over there.
Come over here, Joe. Come on.
You're welcome.
Joe says you're welcome, audience, and we are very, very grateful to have him.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the audience, I
Yes.
want to point out a thing that Indigo Decay just said in the chat. Because it's really, really good talking a little bit more about the hate that we were
Yeah.
just talking
Yeah.
about. Indigo Decay said that they really liked that the hate was spiky on the outside, a weapon turned against others, but full of love on the inside. I feel like that says a lot about the way that hate is weaponized to create feelings of security within in-groups in society. And I completely agree that it can be a rough metaphor to explore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, one of those things that I thought was coming out of the hate, which is interesting, like Shayna's character got invested in the hate and was like on the wrong side of this war, but also I mean, it's very complicated.
Yes.
It's so
the hate
complicated.
created the Deathless Triumvirate. So like we
Yes.
can agree that at some
That
point
is bad.
Not exactly.
Well, not
Anyway,
exactly, but
that side did, kind of.
the Vizsla lost. That is the one thing I know.
Yeah.
So, but also, Shayna took umbrage with things and was justified in that.
Yeah.
Like Calvin, who fought against the hate cyst
Yeah.
in his youth and like saw the terrible things that it did, very easily could say, hey, that wasn't right and you weren't on the right side of things. But he also very easily looks at the same things that Shayna looks at and goes, well, this isn't right either.
Yeah.
And we need to fix this.
Yeah.
Like Shayna, I think there is something true and something powerful in Shayna as a marginalized person, a disenfranchised person, picking up and using that anger and indulging in that, and that not necessarily being a completely toxic thing. Like it is a complicated issue because they're like, as they point out, like it isolates you. You're spiky on the outside, and you feel good on the inside, even if you're not necessarily doing good things. But at the same time, your anger is justified, and
Those
action
spikes can
isn't.
protect you,
Yeah.
right?
Which I thought that was something that you were going for from jump. So it's very cool that evolved.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that I was sort of going for. It ended up being a lot more textual with the hate, like whispering and talking and things like that, which was like all Darcy and so good.
What an inspired choice!
yeah.
Filling hate with kids.
Yeah, and it was like so like much when I like looked at like the hate and things like that. Like I thought about like myself and my own experiences and like my own like sometimes need to like survive and deal with these different things like moving through the world. That like being able to touch on like that like having like discomfort and prickly things is not always a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to the development mode scene, that flashback that we did where Shayna was the hate and leading this army of hate, and Calvin is standing on the deck of the golden ship and like you couldn't possibly look more privileged. He's in
Yeah.
this military uniform.
yeah.
He's on a literal gold ship.
Yeah.
And he's saying that, liberal line of your hate can't be more important than our
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Shayna actually has gone through some shit and like is representing important things. And that being opposing sides that we know through the season get together, realize how they align in perspective, and go about taking action to like actually fix things
Yeah.
and change things was very, very cool. And
Yeah.
I like how that narrative unfolded very much.
When we entered this season, a theme that we talked about a little bit was like justice. And I feel like we never, we were addressing bad systems of justice, right? And dismantling that. But I do like, I think on a more, I like I'm glad that I still feel like that thread, that, you know, seemingly opposing sides coming together to find the productive and value that they both hold, and pushing forward with that. Like, I don't know, I feel like that feeds into some of the sort of, like, if not actionability, like kind of proactive, a proactive thread about justice and how change can be made through the world that I really appreciate we got there. And it's also fucking emergent, which is like wonderful.
Yeah, I truly, truly love that part of it was taking time to, like, having a character that represents or very much like looks the part of all of the things that we're supposed to think of good. And then having a character represent things that, like, oh, we're not supposed to like that. And then very much like crashing into, like, no, you need to like this, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's good
Ooh.
stuff, and made me very happy. Another wild thing, because you were talking about justice being a central tenet in theme, we had gentrification as a central tenet in theme, which also turned out to be part of the meta plot of the whole thing, which was wild.
Shocking.
And that, to me,
I don't even know what to do with that.
I thought that
I'm
was
so surprised.
just a natural extension of the things that we did in season 1 of taking the surrealist stuff and, like, oh, well, let's make this Chicago.
Yeah.
Let's make this like mundane Chicago
Sound
with
holes
the same corruption and civic issues and upkeep and maintenance. And, like, sure, yeah, let's introduce gentrification, and that's just been a thing that's part of the setting.
Totally mind-blowing, honestly. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. It was really satisfying. It was really satisfying to get to give you the secrets that your character sort of discovered, because we accidentally uncovered the main meta plot, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun reading the envelope.
So yeah.
I didn't get to read all of it,
And
but I got to read a bit of it.
I sent there are a couple of, like, secrets that I had sent to the both of you over the course of this show, and so I bet there's some stuff that probably the audience still doesn't know, and I'm okay with that. But I think that's something that I would maybe play up in a future game, is like the joy of secrets, of, like, you know, secret information about other NPCs or like how we deal with information and what is known and what we think we know. I just think that's a really fun thing to play with in Invisible Sun. So I highly recommend everyone getting better handwriting than me and writing down on scraps of paper and handing it out. And there's going to be one thing that is going to be really cool that if we ever do a season 3, I would love to take advantage of, is going to be a digital props kit that's coming out for the Black Cube. So there are all these mysterious scrawlings that may or may not have meaning in the books and the cube. I have not deciphered them, so I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Darcy's not up in that secrets channel.
Nope,
Yeah.
I am not. Definitely not. This season would have probably played out a little differently if I had been. But they're going to release that as, like, a font and have a bunch of other, like,
nice.
cool, nice fonts. And, like, there's already neat, like, letterhead and stuff. And so I think there's, like, resources to make some really cool props. There's even going to be, like, something that you can send off and get, like, a
stamp?
a stamp made, or like a wax seal stamp thing made, which would be so cool.
Very cool.
So I'm excited.
Stamps are neat.
I like props. I don't know how you guys felt about having the medallions around,
The
and
medallions
the
were
tokens and stuff.
so dope.
I
like props.
like having the table dressed up. It feels
Yeah.
Yeah.
nice.
Yep.
Look, I'm a LARPer. I like physical things a bunch. Like, I like I play a lot of, like, black box theater, like just everyone's in black games. But I also play in games where, like, all right, this house has been turned into, like, a Mayan step pyramid, and at the climax of the game, someone climbs the top of it and eats a Jello heart. That's an actual game that
Sweet.
my spouse ate a Jello heart at.
Whoa.
Someone built a Mayan step pyramid in their backyard. Chicago, it's great. And, like, it is just, like, so fun to, like, sort of, like, almost like it feels like rediscover that in tabletops for me.
Yeah,
Because so much of the tabletops experiences that I had been like doing and experiencing and like going through are like playing a lot of like small queer games that like don't necessarily have or like this like culture of like prop making and like passing on things like that. Whereas like D&D really has that sort of like culture of like prop making sort of stuff, and like other big like tabletop games like a lot of the like White Wolf games and like Shadowrun and things like that have that sort of like feel of like, oh, and now you should like hand them a thing that's like the physical thing. To like sort of get into that and like muck around with all of these super cool props was great.
Yeah, tactile pleasures and immersive elements are one of the things that like is very clearly outlined in the intent of the design of Invisible Sun. It's why it was just a big cube for a long time. And like I see people gripe about that, but like if you're somebody who's like played in a game with props or played in a game with handouts, like you understand intuitively on some level the power of that. I like that there is a game system that really wants to indulge in that space, even if it is a thing that I could never buy unless I was somehow doing it through my company. It's just very, very neat. And I like that experience quite a bit.
So I'm also really happy that there's a digital version of it now. So the Black Cube exists in digital. You can go out and get it today if you want to. But we will have a second print run in case some people are under the impression that there are no more Black Cubes to be had. There is going to be a second print run, probably the last. And we are doing pre-orders for those now, and you get the PDF free. So in case you like, and there's sort of a deal where like if you get the PDF and you decide, hey, I do want the tactile components, you get like a huge discount on the Black Cube. So I'm glad that we like, I think the question is coolness of the tactile experience and the tactile experience being inherently like an accessibility issue, one way or another, right?
Yeah.
Like the more components you add, you're starting to make it harder to access for many reasons, depending on the logistics, right? Could be money, could be, like having to wear certain clothes or hold certain objects, right? There's all sorts of motor
and like
issues you could have.
Blockbuster LARPs run into this a lot.
Yeah, totally. So I'm just glad that like I think the answer, like I love when I get to see that the answer tends to be like plurality, like make there lots of games that, if you have so many games, right, and like so many versions of games, would be great too, right? Like then you can have the different formats that you need to access the greatest audience, to serve the greatest good with your game. And so I'm really glad that we, and I'm part of the reason I was so excited for this stream initially was because I was really worried lots of people would never be able to access this. And I think there is such cool and fun, weird game design that I really love. I was excited that you were sort of pitching this show as a way for people to access it, especially since it's recorded in person. Because there's almost no other streams that really
get to do this. Yeah.
So
that was definitely the intent of like, well, there's all this mystique around it. Let's just pull back that veil so people can see it. And we sort of did that season 1 because we barely had the product, but in season 2 we definitely got to invest in that and like. Like I feel like I see which parts of it are valuable, and I see which parts of it maybe don't inform my experience as much. But like the overall experience, I enjoyed, and I know that there are people who this is their thing.
Yes.
I look at people and I know like there are folks who play Shadowrun. It's like Shadowrun is their thing. It speaks to something in their soul. And this is a game that is crafted to speak to very particular souls, and I'm glad that it exists for them.
Yeah. Me too. I love this game. I love this group. Thank you so much. Are there any final things we have?
One final thing. The thing that we did at the end of season 1, a question that Darcy asked, and that I'm very curious to hear Adira's response to is, mechanically, what did you think of your character? How did you enjoy that experience? Because I will say, for those who have not watched the wrap-up episode for season 1, I was the only person who really, really enjoyed my character mechanically, and still really enjoy that character mechanically. How did Shayna treat you?
Yeah, so, I mean, mechanics-wise, one of the things I was initially drawn to Apostates about was their counterspelling ability.
Yeah.
I never used it. I never upgraded it.
Okay.
I talked about doing it.
Yeah.
I considered doing it once. I never used it. I talked a bunch about how I thought counterspelling was very cool.
Yeah.
And that it would be interesting to be able to interact with magic sort of in a no matter what sort of sphere. I never used it. I also was pretty hyped about another ability that I bought for Shayna that I also never used, sort of because of the sorts of threats we were facing.
Yeah.
I bought Shayna the ability to drain magic with a touch from other people, to steal sorcery from other Vistlae by touching them.
Cool.
And we never really were in a position that like would be like, oh, I'm gonna go steal a bunch of sorcery from that person and use it to funnel my own stuff. But like, aside from like missing out on those two abilities that I was pretty excited for, like Shayna was great. Shayna like hummed along like a well-oiled machine. She was very good at stabbing. She was like a lot of fun in her other abilities, being able to like totally futz around and like pull out all of the stops that I've learned through interacting with like Pattern and Amber Diceless doing the warp times and space stuff. Shout out to Amber Diceless and Pattern. Was a lot of fun. And also, like, my favorite abilities that I think I bought for Shayna were, like, a few of the cantrips. Like, I loved
they were really cool.
when I encountered the cantrip that was, Shayna cast this cantrip and no longer has to wear glasses.
Yeah.
I was like, that was great. Like it was such a characterful sort of defining moment that like Shayna wakes up in the morning and one of the first things she does is cast all these cantrips on herself. She had a cantrip for ambidextrousness.
Yeah.
She had a cantrip for the glasses thing, like being able to touch a book and read it. That was one of the cantrips that I bought. Being able to light a little fire with her fingers. I think I maybe did once, twice, like lighting the candle at the end. That like was just like so much fun. And like I would have liked to sort of like get to explore some of those other abilities that like I was initially sort of excited about, but I can just play a different character that sort of explores those abilities.
Yeah.
And it's whatever. I've played characters that are heavy around counterspelling a lot in a lot of different settings. Like that's like characters that can counterspell and characters that are like basically immune to all harm are like two of my big character tropes. Like I play lots of people who are like invincible and useless. like their entire shtick is that they can't die. They're not good at accomplishing things. And like that like I didn't, while I was excited to like experience and interact with those sorts of abilities in like this setting, I like didn't really feel like it was too much of a loss not to like get to deal with them. Also because like some of the things that when you're making a character and you're excited about doing them, if you've never interacted with the system before, you might be excited about all the wrong different things.
Yeah.
And like instead you sort of like delve deep in things that's like, oh, Mage's Path. I wasn't super excited about taking it because my first thought was I was like, I don't know, like getting past, like being able to move past obstacles, that doesn't seem that fun.
Yeah,
like,
because it seems like, oh yeah, I've taken away a lot
I've taken away this
things.
whole big fun component of like ramming my head against obstacles. But then the Mage's Path was a blast. So,
Yeah.
One of the things that I like, I think from a game design perspective, I see things like Mage's Path differently. When selecting Mage's Path, what I thought as a player is, oh, now all of the barriers are going to be level 6 or more. Great. So it just means, oh yeah, we're just raising the stakes.
Okay, so per chat, Dark Ball was invented by a backer?
Oh God, yeah.
What? I thought that was the game.
Same! I thought it was from the canon. I had no clue.
Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you so much, Dev3388.
I was trying to
Wow.
tie Dark Ball to the meta. I was like, is this... It was one of those things I'm like, oh, this is so perfectly emblematic of how oppressive the Deathless Triumvirate is in their society that we just have
my
like
God.
these Hunger Games that rove
Rove
around
around?
the city.
It was so good.
Oh my God. I was just like, delicious, delicious.
I sent you
love our
folks, like,
backers.
some of the Notion articles and stuff, but I guess I never said, and it was invented by like Dev and Jason Robinson. I had a great conversation with the two of them.
God.
And my only regret is that like there was so much more Dark Ball nonsense that we left on the table, but we're gonna get to it because we have our noir story that has to happen
God, during a Dark Ball match.
during a Dark Ball match, or at
Yes.
least has to culminate in it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
It was so good. Some of the
thematic
lore in
cards,
there.
we're bringing in classic noir and we're tying it to a guest sports anime, and
Yes.
that's going to be a wild road to hoe, I
Yeah.
think.
It
Uh-huh.
is.
Yeah. Dev, if go to Gen Con so I can high five you, please.
Yes, please.
I don't know where you live.
Dev may have some continental issues getting into Gen
I don't,
Con, but
I don't care.
but mage step your way across
Yes,
it. Okay, figure it
Can't
out.
be a level 6 barrier.
Yeah.
I mean, the Trump administration sucks. So
Ken Davidson points out a moment that I also want to highlight as being amazing is when like. I know it's like an ability you have, which still blows my mind, but like whispering to your sword that like it was doing a good, and that it was a good, and you appreciated it, and like made it more stabby, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it was so good.
It was one of the secrets in the book, and I didn't know what to spend all my points on because I had all these extra points.
'Cause I just rained points. I was
Because I
like,
had
how do
maxed
you-
out basically all of my fighting skills. And I was like, what am I going to... Oh, I guess I'll buy this ability to be able to say nice things to my weapon.
When are any of the books that were just released full of secrets? And if so, which one is
Book
it?
M,
Book M. Okay.
which some of your
Yes,
abilities
I took
are
some
from.
character abilities from Book M.
I strongly advise to pick up Book M then because I
Yeah.
still haven't looked at it,
Yeah.
but one of my favorite things, because you accumulate, or at least in the games that I've played, I get to accumulate all of this acumen, and I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with all of it. I got more than I want, and looking through the secrets like helped things about the character fall into place. Like especially early season 1, the way Calvin behaved started to formulate because I had all this extra acumen, and I'm like, oh, these secrets help me punch above my weight in terms of the spells that I can cast.
Yep.
And now that we're at like such a high level that we've got the magic to do whatever, it still informs a character's personality of like Calvin will cast 1 or 2 big
Yeah.
spells, and that's it. That's his thing.
Yeah.
So that being facilitated by character building is like a very cool thing. So having as many options as possible,
Yeah.
like that's something I miss that I don't do in games that often
Yeah.
anymore. Because like I used to play a lot of D&D, 3.5, a lot of Shadowrun,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's when you did that.
Yeah.
And these days I play a lot of story games.
Yeah, same.
And like one of my great joys of like feeling like the system was like gonna work for my players, this is from season 1, was like I think we were like finishing character creation or something, or maybe we were leveling up at some point, but like Alan and Kat and James were like looking at the secrets and like looking through some other stuff. They were looking through character options and being like, oh my God, like I am so about these options. Like I want them. I want them a lot. And they were like, I don't usually want like options. I think maybe it was you, James.
It was
who
definitely
like,
me, yeah.
Yeah, like it was just being astounded at like
I don't
how invested you
Yeah,
were.
the power fantasy
Yeah.
like of games of like accumulating powers to do things with is not a feeling that I
Yeah.
get from games much anymore. I'm much more interested in emotional power fantasies, which I will talk about later. But I like For the time when I was coming up in role playing, the power fantasy of like building a strong character and character optimization was very much part of like the meta of how people behaved in the club that we were in and whatnot. And a lot of the games that we played facilitated that. And this is the first kind of game that I've played in a long time that does those things. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can fuck with this. I enjoy this.
I used to play these D&D 3.5 mostly, like basically pitched arena battles on the Giant in the Playground forums.
Oh
wow.
man, those forums.
And it was all about optimization, and your general goal was like to effectively get a book banned.
Yeah.
Was to be like, I have broken this so much to like get a book banned. Like they realized that they hadn't banned Call of Cthulhu D20, so a friend of mine was like, well, I'm gonna break it. And like all these people were trying to like summon elder gods, and he just like cheesed out dynamite instead. And that's what got the book banned. That's like
amazing.
It is this like very like specific sort of feel of like well, I'm gonna like optimize this character and like do all these things and like be like, look, no, like this very like sort of rules lawyery sort of like feel, which like Invisible Sun doesn't hit, but definitely is adjacent to some of the things there.
Yeah, the feeling that I felt is, oh, I want to collect fun powers.
Yeah.
I want to do different things. Like,
I think having Book M with more options is gonna like, you know, as you, it felt a little weird like when some secrets most players who advance are going to want to get, right? Like the Expansive Endeavor, you can spend more Bene on an action. There are
I
secrets.
bought that one.
Yep.
They're pretty frequent ones, right? But then I think you want enough secrets that you can go explore a space that no other player's exploring. And I think having Book M is going to be really helpful for that. So that comes with a cool slipcase. So it's going to hold Book M, the
Secrets of Silent Streets?
Secrets of Silent Streets, which is already out, all about Satyrine, which I've made great use of and enjoyed thoroughly. Teratology, which is about to come out and is going out to backers, which is all sorts of critters and weird NPCs and monsters and stuff, which I really could have used.
Which means there's good art in that.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And then the final one I think is maybe Nightside that goes in there. It's coming out in a while, so I don't know. But one thing that's really nice is Book M comes with the slipcase. The slipcase can also just miraculously, through magic, is a perfect fit for the 4 books that come in the cube. So in case you want to have it out. It's very pretty. I'm glad I have it. I actually don't have any of my copies of those things, except for Secrets. I'm a little mad about it.
Monty!
Backers, you get yours first, so in case you were wondering. Darcy has to wait.
All right. Well, folks, I had such a good time.
Yeah, the season was great.
Thank you so much.
I cannot thank the backers enough for
Yes.
allowing us to have this experience.
Yes.
You know, this is the sort of thing that
Yeah.
we would enjoy doing, but I don't think any of us can justify doing without getting paid for it. So I thank you so much for supporting this.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know when season 3 is going to be, but like I like this character. It's one of the reasons that even though we lost a lot of the people that did season 1 with us, like I wanted to keep going, and like there are things that need to be established, and like there's relationships and friendships that have to develop. So I'll try to put together season 3. The next things that we're going to be doing Kickstarter-wise for One Shot are not positioned in a way for me to be able to talk about them in depth yet, but I think you should be excited for them, and you may very well be seeing some of these people in that. So get excited about it, but I will be tackling that project before I return to Woman with Hollow Eyes to maybe close out the chapter.
But also, there is still some more Women with Hollow Eyes stuff coming.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there are the podcast feed episodes for season 2.
Yep.
There are still more of the podcast season 1 episodes coming out
Yeah.
that are all really cool.
Yeah, they're
We're going to
beautiful.
do this noir thing
Yeah, we're going to do our supplemental episodes for sure.
And there is the stretch goal with the episodes with Alan Liddick.
Yeah. So like, and Alan might even be involved in this noir thing.
I'm hoping
as far
so,
as I know.
kind of, yeah.
So it depends
Maybe I'll
on
make Alan run it.
depends on Alan's schedule. Oh my God.
Right? I'll just sit back and watch.
That would be
Femme
so
Fatale,
funny.
we've got Seven, and Alan running it. Anyway.
Interesting. But Alan does such a good Seven too.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
And you run some pretty good noir, so you should run.
That's true.
Look at me,
I
trying
have
to-
done a few of them. Look at you.
You're just
I
like,
just
you're just
wanna
like, I don't
watch.
want to GM.
Do
you wanna
you'll
play
make
Darcy?
a fantastic Gal Friday.
Yeah.
So,
Or like the plucky newspaper boy
yeah.
sidekick. Yeah.
That feels right. Plucky snailologist that you have in every noir.
Yeah. So again, thank you all so much for
Yes.
supporting this.
Thank you.
We're going to be getting art for season 2 stuff, and then we're going to be constructing this PDF.
Yeah.
So it'll
Rag
take a
picture
little
Shayna.
bit. It is
Yeah.
not going to take as long as
Nope.
the first season
Sorry.
did, but I can almost guarantee it will be as beautiful as the first seasons. So. I'm rambling at this point. Again, thank you. We love you very much. And Darcy, take us out.
Everybody, I hope you, thank you for joining us in both shadow and actuality. You're all lovely Vizsla who can weave magic unconsciously as we have in your own lives, and I hope it goes very well for you all. Stay safe in shadow, my friends.